My name is Ruby and I'm doing a review of the Clever Fox Dotted Journal 2.0. I'll start this review by describing some highlights of the journal, followed by an overview of the journal and packaging and the main features of the paper and the results of my pen test. There are several outstanding features of the Clever Fox Dotted Journal. Firstly, it has 100% recycled paper. This is a really important feature because the paper industry is one of the world's biggest consumers of natural resources. The next thing I love is that the dot grid lines up across both pages on every page, and I'll show you that later. It's lightweight for its type, a hardcover. It's 160 pages and has a heavy cover, and yet it's lighter than other similar journals, and it weighs about 375 grams. Finally, it cost me a reasonable $17 US. That doesn't include shipping. This works out at 11 cents US per page. So let's get into the journal. I bought this myself and I'm not reviewing it for or on behalf of Clever Fox planners. The journal came with a belly band and was simply packaged with a layer of shrink wrap. There is no box or sleeve, and this fits well, I think, with the recycled paper content in that they're making an effort to reduce packaging. Now, the company has a very good website where you can view their full range. The journal has a matte leatherette cover that's stamped with doodle designs, front and back, and it's available in lots of colours. I've chosen the purple. While it has a hard cover, you'll see that it has a small amount of flex and it has a really pleasant hand feel, and I just enjoy looking at it. Like, it's a nice journal to look at. There is a pen loop. You can see the stitches holding it in place on the back cover. There are 3 ribbons in 3 different colours. The only thing I'll say about the ribbons is that they're just a touch short, so that if you've got it in a page and you try and pull it around the side without opening the book, you can't because it's too short. And it has a pocket on the inside of the rear cover. The journal came with these planner stickers as a little bonus. Now, I like to try my journals before I review them, so I've decided to use this one as my gardening journal, which you can see here. You wouldn't know the paper is 100% recycled because it is white. It has no flecks or flaws. At 120 GSM, it's heavy enough to be sturdy, but it's not so heavy that you can't enjoy a good flip through, which I find happens with the thicker paper journals, that it just doesn't feel the same when you're flicking through it. The journal comes with several printed pages, including the return to owner page, and it's kind of cute. This page has a your reward line on it. It's got a key page or reference page, and it's got 3 index pages. There are 27 by 40 dots that go almost to the edges of the pages. This journal is slightly taller than other A5 journals, but still fits into the A5 category. And that's probably why it gets that extra row of dots, although it does go very close to the edges compared to some other journals. It has page numbers, and something to note with the page numbers is that they do sit inside the grid lines. As I noted earlier, the dots line up on every page, and I'll just show you. It doesn't matter what page I flick to in this journal, the dots line up, and that is quite unusual. This is the only journal I've tried where I get a good line up on every page. Before I go to my pen test, I'll just show you quickly what I've done so far in my garden journal. So far, there's no ghosting or bleeding except for the Tombow pen, and you can just see a slight bit of ghosting on some points where I've obviously held the pen down for a little bit longer. So I do a standard pen test in all my journals. I've come up with something that gives me a chance to use a range of pens. So first of all, I write a heading using a range of ink and gel pens in faux calligraphy. This means that parts of the letters are coloured in using the pens. The Clever Fox journal performed fairly well with only slight ghosting from the darkest and wettest pens. I've actually chosen the blues because I had some quite, and some greens because I had some quite dark colours in that, and I really wanted to push the paper as hard as I could. This test with the inks showed only slight ghosting from the Stabilo 0.88 and from the Faber-Castell gel pen. So that's these two. But as you can see, it is really minimal ghosting, like you can barely see that through, and this is actually from the faux calligraphy part where I've actually gone over my own pen a couple of times. Okay, next I test smudging. This paper appears to have a coating of some sort, so smearing can occur. I use a Pigma micron pen, and basically I draw the square and then smudge my finger over it within set periods of time. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. I was getting smudging up until like a very slight amount of smudging on the 10 sometimes, and none on 15 seconds. So that means that if you are doing something like using your pen to write over lead pencil, then you will need to wait to rub out the pencil for maybe 10 seconds or so, just to avoid any smudging. I also test smudging with the highlighter. After 10 seconds I highlighted that and there is no smudging, and there's no smudging if you highlight first. Another test I do is on dot darkness, because a lot of people don't like when the dots are too dark and show through their pictures. So I have a series of Tombow pens that are of increasing darkness, and I test what level I have to use before the dots don't show through anymore. And you can see in this one that there's a very faint show through of dots on the 3rd level, so I've had to go to the 4th level. You can't see the dots at all with that level. So the dots on this, that's a bit darker than average. Average would be the 3rd one. So this one, slightly darker dots, but they're not too bad. Now I've also tested how the page colour compares with my whiteout. The bottom of the W I did with my white Jelly Roll pen, and that's come out as a fairly warm white. Then I just used a normal correction pen to do the main section in the middle there, and then I used my Signo white pen to do, that's this one, to do the bottom of the U there, and that's probably the best match to this paper. And then finally I made a bit of a mess of it, but I used gouache to do the bottom of the T with a paintbrush. So it's definitely a cool white paper, and most cover-up options seem to be leaning towards a warmer white, so whiteout may not be an option in this particular journal. Just quickly here too, I coloured this in with a Pilot friction pen, which you can rub out the ink, and I like to test how well it rubs out. So you can see I've written with the friction pen here, and I'm just going to rub out this bit and we'll just see how well, that was actually quite quick to remove, so that's handy. So next I test how effective an eraser is. So I just colour in a section with pencil and then use my rubber to see how well it comes off, and this one cleared it very easily, so I'm happy about that. I do a little writing test to see how it feels with a fountain pen, because fountain pens tend to be a little bit more sensitive to rough paper than most pens. I use a Pilot Prera, This paper feels really smooth. It's not perfect, like not super smooth, but it's right up there. I've given it a 4 out of 5. I also try and do a heading with the fountain pen as well, just to see how it feels. It felt good. Now, here I've tested a range of more creative media like watercolor pencils, highlighters, colored pencils and brush pens. There's also a fine Sharpie and a fine Posca paint pen. This one here is a very wet metallic gel pen of 2 different colours. They all performed very well, with mainly the Sharpie showing through to the other side, as you can see there. All the others, there's a slight bit of dotting where the mild liner, so I've obviously pressed, you can see I've actually pressed a bit harder at those points and gone over them. Where the Tombow has been done, so this pen, where the brush pen has been used twice, so when I do it, I do all of them single and then I do double layer on 2 of them, and that hasn't shown through. So that's a bit different to what I saw on the front on my title page, where it did come through a bit. So it probably depends on the pressure that you hold the pen with. There's very little ghosting. It's the next page is usable. Even the Sharpie's not that bad. There's a little bit of ghosting where the watercolor pencil came through once it was wet. The watercolor painting, was done in the wet on wet style. This is where you paint the area with water and then add colour paint and allow it to spread. So it's the style that's most likely to cause problems with lightweight paper because of the amount of water. And this paper coped really well. There's a light crinkle in the page. It's not a bothersome amount that would stop you working on the other side. And there's no ghosting or bleeding at all. Like, you can't see any colour through there. I've used 2 different weights of micron pens, and one heart is stamped with ink and the other is painted with Winsor & Newton liquid ink with a paintbrush. Overall, this paper has performed really well and compares well to heavier 160 GSM papers without feeling stiff and weighty like that kind of paper does. I've started using this journal. I'm very happy with it so far. It's a very good alternative to the 160 GSM paper journals, especially if you prefer a smaller, lighter journal that feels more lived in when you turn the pages. It's a good looking journal, it's a reasonable price, and I'm very happy to recommend it.